Hello guys, in this video, we will be looking at an interesting endgame, the queen versus pawn endgame. Usually, this is an easy win for the side with the queen, but if the pawn has reached the 2nd or 7th rank, it is not easy for the side with the queen to win, because of the constant threat of promotion. That's why in today's video, I will be talking all about this endgame. So the first step is to bring the queen as close to the king and pawn as possible. But while doing this, it has to always be a check so white doesn't have time to promote. There are many ways to accomplish this, but I will just give an example. So we start with this check, and white has to either block the pawn, obviously bad, or step away from the promotion square. When they do, we don't have to give a check, but we can move here, controlling this square because the king no longer supports promotion. So any move is fine if it stops promotion. Now when the king comes back, we give this check, and we have successfully relocated our queen to where we want it to be. This is the start of a sequence that we will repeat over and over. White has 3 options. They don't want to block the pawn, so they choose this square. Now we give this check which forks the king and the pawn. But you might think it's useless because the king defends the pawn. It is true, but now we have this check, and if white wants to keep the pawn alive, they have to move here. What do you notice? That's right. The pawn is blocked. This was the whole point behind all that maneuvering. Once the pawn is blocked, we can bring our king closer. Now white has to move the king out of the way. If they move here, the pawn would be pinned and still can't be moved. Now the next step is to pin the pawn to the king, like this. Now white has 2 options. If they move up, we can place our queen in front of the pawn, and with our queen blocking the pawn, white can never promote, and we win. So instead, they move here. Now we give this check. Does this look familiar? It is similar to this position after we have relocated our queen from here. The last time, the king slid to the side. Now what happens if they moved up instead? It's still the same actually. We move behind the pawn, and after they come back to defend, we give this check to force the king in front of the pawn. Now once again, we bring the king. Now we just keep repeating. We pin the pawn. If they move up, we blockade the pawn with the queen. We give this check, then get behind the pawn if the king doesn't block the pawn. Then give this check to force it in front of the pawn again. Whenever you manage to get the king to block the pawn, bring the king closer. Now that the king is already very close, we can take advantage of that and give this check, because the king now supports the queen. If white wants to keep the pawn, they have to block it again. Now we move the king closer one last time. Now we can simply take it and deliver checkmate. But what if white moved here instead? Well, we still take the pawn and put the king in this cage. Then we simply approach with our king for the checkmate. This whole technique only applies to pawns on B, D, E, and G files. Pawns on the other files have differences in which I will talk about in another video. So see you in the next video.